In this step, we're going to get the canopy installed on the chassis. Obviously, we need the canopy out of its box. It's wrapped in a special box by itself, so it won't be damaged. You need the canopy mount parts for the chassis, 2.5mm hex driver, some blue thread lock, some slow CA, and once again some sort of wooden probe, in this case a chopstick. We're going to use that to put the grommets in the canopy so we don't scratch it up. All of the bolts in this step are M3 by 8mm socket heads, except for 4 of them, which are 10mm long. Those 10mm bolts go through the canopy screws, or the canopy nuts, and they'll only go through one way. It has a flat bottom on it, and it has a cup on the top. That's where the bolt goes through. It'll fit tight. Put some blue thread lock on it, tighten it down really well. Just hold it on the serrated part with your fingers. Then you'll use M3 by 8s to assemble the canopy posts to the mount plates. The mount plates are all the same. The posts are, the shorter ones are for the front, the longer ones are for the back. These, put the blue thread lock on them, they just thread together. If for some reason you can't get one tight, and I only had one that wouldn't, these have flats on them, so you can use a 7mm open end to grab it and tighten them down so you make sure they're good and tight. Here's where we fill in the blank holes left on the chassis. You remember up in the front when we put the radio tray on, we left the center bolt out. The reason is because the front canopy mount attaches there. You use an M3 by 8 bolt, thread it through into the radio tray. Use blue thread lock. Now that's the required side. If you notice, there's another side of this mount which has a PEM nut in the chassis. This is kind of an optional mount. If you put another bolt through there and tighten it down, if you hit the ground, you're probably going to damage the canopy because this probably isn't going to break off. If you only leave one bolt in it, this can move around and will probably snap off between the post and the mount, and save at least, you know, your canopy to some degree, and probably save the chassis as well. So it's entirely up to you. If you put both of them in, you'll get less vibration. If you put one of them in, you're less likely to tear up the chassis and do less damage to your canopy. So you want to do the same thing with the front mount on the other side. Again, the top bolt goes into the center cross frame mount in the radio tray. And in the back, we've got exactly the same setup. We left the top bolt out of the front transmission mount. The longer rear canopy mount is going to fit into this hole, and you're going to attach it using the M3/8 bolt into that front transmission mount with blue thread lock. That's the required side. And just like in the front, you've got the option to put a second bolt in this, which goes into a PEM in the chassis, or you can leave it out. If you leave it out, you hit the ground, this is probably going to break off, do less damage. It's probably going to vibrate more if you don't put it in. It's left up to you either way. Personally, I'm going to put them in because gas canopies tend to vibrate more. This will help resolve some of that. So when you've got the canopy mounts in place, you're going to have the longer ones in the back, shorter ones in the front, both sides of the chassis. Now we can move on to preparing the canopy to slide onto the chassis.